Robert Trujillo, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know music is a big part of your life, to say the least.
Yeah.
Do you remember back when, like your earliest memories of music, when you were hearing your parents playing or music around the house, what that music was that started really percolating in your brain?
Yeah, basically my parents were young enough to really enjoy different styles of music. I remember my mom dancing in her hot pants and her elevator shoes to a lot of the James Brown stuff that was happening, but also a lot of Motown music was going on in our house back then. But at the same time, we had an equal amount of Led Zeppelin going down, and even like Carole King and all that stuff. It was all happening back then, which was a very exciting time for me. Because it's funny, because I go to my mom's house now and I still see the dresser that I used to stand on to play air guitar, and slide around, sort of age 5. She still has it.
Wow, brings back those memories, huh?
Yeah.
Time stands still.
Oh yeah, And
So some of that was jazz. I mean, a lot of us grew up, listening to the top 40, the Beatles and the Stones and everything. Obviously, you started getting into the musicians, the more fusion, Where did that come into the mix? Where you started listening really to the players as much as the song?
Well, as I got a little bit older, I started to really gravitate towards funk music, like funk rock music. Isley Brothers was the first band I saw live at the LA Forum. My mom took me to see them, and I want to say I was about 12 years old or something, somewhere around there. It was the Go For Your Guns tour. They played at the Forum, and it was really cool. I remember everybody was standing up and dancing in their seats, and the opening band was Wild Cherry. And they had the big hit, Play That Funky Music,
Sure.
White Boy. And then after that, I started going to a lot of shows with my dad, and we saw Earth, Wind and Fire together on the Spirit tour, which was a great show. They had, I guess it might have been Doug Henning or somebody who did all their stage production. They're flying in the sky and all this disappearing. So
the pyramid and all that.
The pyramid, yeah. There was a lot of theater stuff that was mixed into the performance. I see some of it now, and it's a little bit hokey, but back then it was like larger than life.
Blew your mind.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, I was into bands like Yes. I saw Genesis. As I got a little older, I started even going to shows by myself as a teenager. That's actually one of the shows I saw Jocko play 4 different times, and one of the shows I think I might have even gone by myself when he word of mouth, not the big band, the scaled down version, which was the last time I saw him. But at some point I discovered fusion, and I thought it was so cool that the bass could become a lead instrument. Stanley Clarke was doing some unreal stuff, and I always knew that that bass-driven music, whether it was Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath, was very exciting to me. But I didn't start playing bass until I was about 16 or 15. I wanted to be a drummer at first. I think every kid wants to be a drummer, and then I wanted to. At another point in time, I thought I was going to be like Keith Emerson and be this rad keyboard player. But the reality sets in. We didn't have a lot of money, and my mom and I lived in these kind of 2-bedroom apartments, and I couldn't have like a big piano there or a drum set or anything. We couldn't afford it, and then you couldn't play loud music.
Sure.
So just kind of at a certain point, my dad had a friend who had a hollow body bass guitar.
Wow.
And I started playing that because I could hear myself through it, even though it didn't work through an amp. And that was officially my first instrument.
Amazing. Yeah. And growing up in Santa Monica, of course, you had the Santa Monica Civic right up the street.
Right.
Beautiful venue, and all the bands used to play there. It used to be one of the main venues in Los Angeles.
And that was the beauty of it, is Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, like my dad lived, maybe a mile away away from there. He lived in Venice Beach, and Santa Monica Civic. He could drop me off there, and it was fine. It was safe because there were also friends of mine that would be there, or I would actually take my bike. Sometimes I'd be with my friends and we would walk. I mean, it was convenient, but everyone was playing there. I mean, not just Weather Report, but I saw a lot of their fusion bands like John Luke Ponty. I saw there. I saw Ronnie Laws there, but I also saw like Ronnie James Dio there. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you too played there. I worked with them at the time.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
everybody
was
the Pretenders
playing
there. I remember when they played. I didn't go to the show, but I remember I wanted to go to the show, but I was so hammered that I never made it out of the house. that was when I was in junior high.
Motley Crue basically got signed there. Doc McGee went to that show at the Civic. Everybody was there.
I
remember a show with Living Colour, Fishbone, and Public Enemy there.
Right.
What a show.
I mean, when I was in Suicidal Tendencies, we played a gig there, and it was a very memorable moment for us because of the fact that we grew up seeing shows there, and now we're playing there, and it was just like,
it's a big time, man.
It's a dream come true.
Big stage and.
Exactly. I was just there, kind of just checking it out, and I see it every day, drive by it, but I actually got out and walked around, and it's not open anymore. It's they were going to tear it down. I don't know if they still are, but it's probably considered a historic landmark now. So hopefully they won't tear it down. It's sad that they can't kind of get it back again and start having shows there.
Yeah.
It's kind of in limbo right now.
It is kind of an antiquated building,
Yeah, I guess they had some issues with health issues even with it. But very historic place.
Sure.
And that's where I discovered most of my bands.
Now, how did you grow into joining Suicidal? I know they were obviously from Venice, and how did that evolution happen?
Well, basically, Rocky George, who was the guitar player, he joined the band in '83, I believe it was. He started jamming with them when we were still in high school. And Rocky and I were great friends. In fact, I turned Rocky on to fusion. He was into like the Rolling Stones. That was his favorite band. He was obsessed with the Stones. And him being a guitar player, I said, man, you got to listen to Al Di Meola, and you got to listen to John McLaughlin, and at that time it was great because guitar players and bass players were listening to Ozzy's stuff and Sabbath and all that, but then they were also listening to Di Meola, and they were also listening to even Pat Metheny. We used to drive out to Palm Springs. I think we were in like 11th grade, and we would ditch school and drive out to Palm Springs and hang out. We just find a random pool at the hotel, and we'd bring a ghetto blaster, and we listen to like Pat Metheny's songs all stoned, and go swimming for free, and have lunch out there, and then we'd drive home, for the afternoon. We'd make it, it was like ditch school, be gone just for those school hours, and hang out there and listen to, of all people, Pat Metheny.
Yeah.
But that's how it was back then. Music was very exciting, and all the different styles were exciting, and Rocky was very much a part of that with me. You go through that with your friends, you embrace certain bands, and it's almost like baseball trading cards or something. I got this one, I got to check this guy out, whatever. We were doing that with bands, and Rocky was getting a lot of sort of top secret information from the Rick Rubin camp through Jeff Hanneman. And in fact, Jeff was the one who turned Rocky on to NWA and Public Enemy, and then Rocky turned me on to it. He was like, hey, check this out. This is what Jeff turned me on to. Ghetto Boys, all that stuff was coming through the pipe through Jeff, and then he turned me on to it. But then Rocky would turn him on to fusion and stuff, and we were just kind of back and forth with all this, and then we go see these bands live. So having a group of friends like that was really great. In fact, we were talking about Shankar or Shanker, but I saw him with John McLaughlin in the One Truth Band, actually at the Santa Monica Civic. That's the first time I saw him, because I'm a huge Shakti fan. I think Shakti's one of the best hidden gems in the world.
Sure. So you had no categories for music. It was either it moved you or it didn't. It could be metal, punk, jazz, fusion.
Oh yeah.
R&B, funk, whatever.
Yeah.
And back then you had freeform radio. They played Sly and the Family Stone and going to Led Zeppelin and then into Weather Report. And,
oh yeah, that's exactly true. I kind of feel bad for a lot of the younger musicians today, and I mean even people that are in their 30s. You know, I mean, I just turned 50, you know, a couple months ago, so I was right there where I was able to experience the 70s and the 80s, and you know, even performed in the 80s and, you know, of course the 90s. So at least having the 70s as my childhood and having my parents at an age where they were really into all that music was great, because I could kind of cruise along on their listening coattail and you know, and kind of digest what was around me. I had a cousin that was really into the hard funk, you know, like Gap Band.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Rick
James and Brick.
Cameo.
Yeah, I love Cameo. We were listening to Cameo last night, my wife and I, in the car. Yeah. And my kids, you know, my son's 10 and my daughter's 8. And they love that stuff, man. Listening to Flashlight.
Yeah.
And on our way to a friend's party, and Flea was there actually from the Chili Peppers, and our mutual friend was playing a lot of old funk too at the party, and Flea and I are going, yeah, you know, Flea's going, listen to this part, this transition, the Funkadelic song, you know, it's badass, you know, just kind of, you know, a bunch of old guys kind of like, you know, digging, you know, music from the past.
But that's the roots. That's what you brought into Suicidal. That's what, you know, is the backbone of even a lot of this hard rock. You know, is that groove.
It's true. You know,
without that, there's no soul.
You know, you're right. I always say the secret ingredient in any band, but I'll say in Metallica, is James Hetfield is an extremely funky guy. I mean, he has. You know, I'm not saying that he's out there playing George Clinton songs, but the guy has a groove that is funky, and he appreciates that, you know, and in the same way that Slayer has a pocket and a groove, and who knows where it comes from, you know, does it come from Dave Lombardo, you know, and intertwine that with Araya and the other guys, and Henneman, you know, but it's there, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the ingredient.
You listen to Zeppelin now, the groove is huge.
It's massive, and it's the same groove that bands like Rage Against the Machine are utilizing and as their weapon in their, and you know, in what their pulse. It's the most important thing, you know. At the end of the day, you know, it's what makes your head bop. You know, it doesn't matter if it's the, you know, the middle section of, you know, Rain and Blood, or you know, or Disposable Heroes groove, or, you know, the groove to a Cameo song or Flashlight or something, you know.
I mean, Inner Sandman's got a groove.
It's got a good groove, yeah. And so I always try to say is that, you know, you're almost, it's inherited. You experience things when you're growing up, the city, the urban, you know, the urban jungle, you know what I mean, and all of what's happening there, and all that gets into you and into your DNA when you're young, and causes you to write these cool songs or whatever they are, you know, whether it's punk or you know, funk or metal or you know, whatever style, you know, it's a part of that, you know, and that's why I feel fortunate to have seen my heroes, you know.
Yeah, you got to go back. If you dig Led Zeppelin, the next best thing is to go find out where they drew their influence from.
Right.
The blues, or like you say, Rage Against the Machine. Morello was probably listening to P-Funk, or you know, all of that. Now tell us about Infectious Grooves and how that grew.
Well, Infectious Grooves was an experiment. When I joined Suicidal Tendencies in 1989, I had an idea that I wanted to continue sort of what I left behind, which was that I did have a funk band in LA, and we played a few of the clubs around town, and no disrespect to the musicians that were in that band at the time, they were all incredible musicians, incredible. I learned so much from those guys, but they were flakes, you know. I had my station wagon, and I was scrounging for pennies, and you know, and just getting spare change to fill the tank. But I'd have to pick up one guy out in South Central LA, and then I'd have to pick up another brother in Santa Monica, and take them to Redondo Beach, you know, and we did a couple gigs. We were also doing a lot of recording in Hancock Park. My friend Dave Dunn was his name.
Oh.
Dave Dunn was a really talented engineer. Produced a few things, but he was a member of this band I was in, and oddly enough, we ended up writing separately. Mike Muir and I ended up writing the first Infectious Grooves album at Dave Dunn's house, because we ended up going back to his studio and doing all our demos there. So it's funny how that connection came from my band at the time, and then a few years later I'm back at the same studio. It's a home studio, but with Mike Muir. So when Suicidal Tendencies parted ways with their bass players, I say bass players because there was Luigi Mayorga, who was really iconic player in my mind, local hero for me. They parted ways, and then they had another guy in there for one album, and then they had me come down and jam with them, and basically I thought they were going to audition other guys, but they didn't. They just said, hey, if you want the gig, you can have it. We're leaving in a couple of weeks to go open for Anthrax, and that would have been in '89. But around that time, I thought it'd be cool to create a body of music that sort of fused the suicidal flavor to maybe something that was a bit more Parliament, a bit more James Brown, you know, not knowing what it was going to become, but, you know, I thought it would be cool if somehow I could bring in some of my, my influence. And I didn't know it was going to be with Mike Muir. I thought it was going to be with the drummer, Ralph Herrera, who was the drummer for Suicidal, but I had played in other, you know, like kind of groove-oriented funk bands with Ralph. That's how I knew him. Ralph was like also a good jazz drummer at Santa Monica High School. But actually, it ended up not being that way. It ended up being that I connected with Mike Muir, the lead singer, and he was the one who was really interested in collaborating with me, and I was like, oh, cool. So we hit it off, and we started writing together almost immediately, you know, and it was a lot of trial and error. We spent a couple years trying to find the sound of Infectious Grooves. The first incarnation was probably not very good. Those demos.
It was basically that hard funk with a punk attitude.
What it was, it was kind of like what we were both into. Mike wanted to bring in elements of PIL, Public Image Limited. He was a big fan of Johnny Lydon, and he liked a lot of the music that was coming out of sort of that punk wave, you know, Sex Pistols and all that, GBH. And I was, you know, bringing in my influences, which were, you know, ranging from, I mean, even like to a certain degree, like ska and, you know, again, a lot of stuff George Clinton was doing. But this is really important. One of the key ingredients was Jaco, you know, Jaco Pastorius. At the time, I didn't want to necessarily learn Jaco Pastorius compositions. You know, I wanted to pull from the idea of what he was doing with his technique or his feel or with harmonics. So I thought it would be cool to pull from that and in the best way I knew. I mean, I was young and just kind of didn't have a lot of rules to my playing. So whatever I could pull from him, I would try to incorporate into a song, into an arrangement. Utilizing his technique and his feel and his flavor and all that stuff. So that's what I applied to the Infectious music the best I could, and it just became what it became.
Yeah, I know you got together in the last year, did a little reunion at the Whiskey, and so it's still percolating, still part of the DNA.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, it's kind of happened in stages over the last 3 years. Suicidal Tendencies was playing on the first Orion Festival, which was in New Jersey, and Mike invited me to come up and play a couple of Infectious Groove songs. So got up, did that, and it was fun, and we thought, we should do this again. So then it was decided, kind of by management actually, said, you guys should come back next year and try and get the band,
Do a whole set.
the touring lineup back together.